And thanks for coming to the last event of this season for the Final Thursday reading series. Happy to announce that featured reader, the next event, which will be at the end of August, will be Ann Miles, an Emerita Professor at UNI, and hopefully a new Final Thursday press book that we'll be working on this summer. So I have a summer project to hopefully see some of that. But tonight's featured reader, Jesse Swan, many of you know, is a professor of English where he's been here at UNI since 1998, and though best known for his work is teaching and research on Renaissance, early modern English literature and culture, and for being quite a snappy dresser. He's recently turned to poetry and including work that he's done that's appeared as part of the Telepoem Booth Project, which I don't even know if I told you this. I think we're going to try to get that here next year. Yeah, we're trying to figure it out. So. And I think this will be his first public poetry reading. So this will be a different side, someone many of you know very well. So I'm looking forward to hearing from Jesse Swan.
I'm used to papers. So thank you all for being here. I really do appreciate it. I feel that poems are completed when they're read or heard. And so I'm very grateful to you for completing some of my poems tonight. Also, a couple of things. I have seasonal allergies. You might be able to hear them. They're better today because of the rain, but that's why I have a lozenge in my mouth. I might cough a little bit. So I apologize. My water is going down. Also, in some of the poems, references made to sex and violence. So it's huge, but everybody's different. So let's see. Thanks a lot to Jim. He's been doing this series for almost as long as I've been here, right? And started out on the Hill, and I remember it very fondly, and I loved it on the Hill. I loved it here too. The progression started in David Brownfield's bookstore, I think. The old philosophy professor had a used bookstore on the Hill, and it was really lovely there. It continues to be lovely, and it's a great event for everybody. And I like this image of Jim, and I use it tonight to thank him because it also matches my sense of what's really important about poetry, art generally, is that life really does imitate art. And that's what Jim's doing here. And a lot of people do that. So we have poets who write poetry that people start imitating art. This is what Kurt Vonnegut recommends as well. And this is from his lesson in creative writing. And I want to read, you probably do know, you've probably seen this quoted in part, but I really do think this is what's valuable, a hugely valuable reason to write poetry. And so I encourage everyone to write poetry. And so Vonnegut says, and in this last paragraph, right, if you really want to hurt your parents, and he just means be your own person, and you don't have the nerve to be gay, all of my life I said, well, I've hurt them already, so I have that, but I can go on. But if you can't be gay, then the least you can do is go into the arts. I'm not kidding. The arts are not a way to make a living. They are a very human way of making life more bearable. Practicing an art, no matter how well or badly, is a way to make your soul grow, for heaven's sake. Sing in the shower, dance to the radio, tell stories, write a poem to a friend, even a lousy poem. Do it as well as you possibly can. You will get an enormous reward. You will have created something. I really do think that's what we have. Lots of artists do this. One poet that I admire a lot, Yoko Ono, does this, and I've then imitated Yoko Ono in some of my poems. And she is such a masterful, magnificent performance artist, so her poetry is part of her life, and she tries to imitate art as a way of living. Her life is art. It's this constant dynamism. Anyway, so here's one little piece from her instruction pieces. They're linked scores. Each item gives you instructions. You have to know a lot about Yoko Ono. You have to know a lot about the late 20th century internationalism, Japanese Anglo-Americanism, all these kinds of things to appreciate the kinds of stuff she's suggesting. And then, of course, so I do want to read her poem, and then I'll read my poem. Hers is a closet piece. Closet piece 1. Think of a piece you lost. Look for it in your closet. Closet piece 2. Put one memory into one half of your head. Shut it off and forget it. Let the other half of the brain long for it. Closet piece 3. Kill all the men you have slept with. Put the bones in a box and send it out into the sea with flowers. And so I've written cottage piece, the linked poems here. And so you kind of have to know several things. And so a simple thing to say is that Americans reading this will often come to the end and say, I don't get it, what's going on? British readers will get it, and especially gay British readers will get it. What gay British readers get is that cottage is a slang term for public laboratory. And cottaging is what gay men do in public laboratories. They have sex. And so that's, and then there's another term, munters. Munters is, in America, we would say something like fad basher, but it's not just that, it's just a generally toxic man, toxic masculinity kind of thing. Again, Americans don't know this, and so they read it and don't get it. Gay Britons would. And so cottage piece 1. Count the running urinals and toilets. Cottage piece 2. Draw a picture on the wall poorly of your favorite memory here. Cottage piece 3. Castrate all the munters you've met here. Grind the glands and flesh into paste. Shape with a cookie cutter and bake into unleavened wafers. Okay, so telephone booth is mentioned. Vince is in the telephone booth. In Council Bluffs, Iowa, at the Potawatomi Arts Center, they have an old telephone booth, and this is the exterior view. This is the interior view. You go in, you can look up in a directory poems, and the poem you think you want to listen to, you dial it up, and then you can hear the poem. And so I'm going to my poem. It is called The Airport Curve, and it's very much a very Iowa poem, and it's a very Cedar Valley poem, and I actually did write this for Vince as well, so I'm glad he's here. They, Vivian Cook, a voice actress, has read it, and so if you go to Council Bluffs, you'll hear this. The next slide, so I want you to hear this, and the next slide is me reading it, but a recording. And they are different poems when you hear them. So I want you to sort of appreciate this. This one is the very low one.
The airport curve. Like the hepatic flexure, the airport curve really only works about one way, not the other. To Waterloo, the road soothes every nerve. Turning to Cedar Falls, exacts all verve for life, for loving uniqueness. So I rather like the hepatic flexure, the airport curve. Coming to Waterloo, so you can serve naturally vitals and pleasant trivial bladder. To Waterloo, the road soothes every nerve that's rattled when to Cedar Falls you swerve. That way, the wrong way sickens and cramps you. Rather like the hepatic flexion. The airport curve appears to work both ways, but seems to serve mystery-loving people one way, not the other. To Waterloo, the road soothes every nerve, and portends diverse pleasures we deserve when we crave them, perfectly placed and not farther. Like the hepatic flexure, the airport curve, one way, to Waterloo, soothes every nerve.
Okay, I can tell you, so the hepatic flexure is the intestine, and it's the curve, the bend in the intestine. So of course, your digested food goes this way. Okay, so this is then the loud one. So, okay, I'm very loud. The airport curve. Like the hepatic flexure, the airport curve really only works well one way, not the other. To Waterloo, the road soothes every nerve. Turning to Cedar Falls exacts all verve for life, for loving uniqueness. So I rather like the hepatic flexure, the airport curve, coming to Waterloo. So you conserve naturally vitals and pleasant trivial bladder. To Waterloo, the road soothes every nerve that's rattled when to Cedar Falls you swerve. That way, the wrong way, sickens and cramps you, rather like the hepatic flexure. The airport curve appears to work both ways, but seems to serve mystery-loving people one way, not the other. To Waterloo, the road soothes every nerve and portends diverse pleasures we deserve when we crave them. Perfectly placed and not farther, like the hepatic flexure, the airport curve one way to Waterloo soothes every nerve. And so I'm kind of curious if anybody knows what the airport curve is. Or did you imagine it? Do you know what that's referring to?
It's looking on 218, am I right? Yeah,
Yeah, that's right, 218. So lots of people who drive it know it then right away, right? So that curve is kind of flexion. So we're good. Okay. So here's another poem. Doesn't need anything. So our best friend Emily. I didn't much care for him. Emily knew she shouldn't say. I marveled at Emily just about every day I knew and told her often. He was terribly self-absorbed, Emily thought, smiling at our friend, the gay widower grieving. She was always so percipient, so clean, I could always sense it, never misled. And highly volatile, Emily knew the dead to be, but never would she say so at this time. Emily knew at this time he needed his husband to shine. I tried to admire her love at this time of the widower over me. At this time, mostly because he's mourning and she's steady, Emily does not matter to him, nor do I matter to Emily. This is Mary Oliver and me on about writing poems. And so this poem, I'm not going to read Mary Oliver's poems. I like reading good poetry, so that's why I've snuck in some other poets' poetry to this reading. But I won't read her poem. But it's a great book, and published poets are often asked, I know they tell me, and this poem tells me, that they need another poem or two. We need more copy for this book, right? And that's what her poem is about. She was told, we need to fill up more pages, Mary, for this book. And she writes this poem. They also say, and I know this from experience, if I'm going to write poetry, I need to write poetry, and that means have time. You write every day at a certain time, for example. And it's something more like what my poem is about. What poem? What poem do I want to write today? A poem about nothing that becomes something when you read it and think about it tomorrow. A poem without punctuation, at least seen here. What man do I want to love now? A man who seems like nothing, but becomes something when you see him as I see him here. A man without toxicity, at least now. What tree do I want to plant here? A tree that shades and suns annually, as it should, as if for us today, a tree that might be a man or a poem. What poem do I want to write? So, those allergies, I said this could be kind of a head cold. So here's when I did have a head cold, I composed it like this: the head cold. In between malaise and burden, in between alertness and mania, in between ears and shoulders, in between scalp and brow, in between frontal and occipital, in between nostrils and eyes, in between larynx and lung root, in between heated and cooled, in between running and stopped, in between whisper and croak, in between absence and presence. For an on and off person, on or off person, the head cold is in between. And here, I wanted to include this because this has been included, I don't know how many poems of mine, much longer poems, none of which I want anybody to complete. I don't know why, but I like these lines. And so what it occurred to me, I said, well, maybe this is the poem. You know, shouldn't be with anything else. And so here it is. Flow stopped so that I know it was flowing. I want the flow of you here, though here's the only spot you will not go. So here, this is a little longer poem, and for tonight, I've added a monody, but especially the three parts. And I do find it readings, it's handy to know where you're at, especially in a longer poem. And so you'll know, oh, here's part one, here's part two, and then, oh, here's part three, good, it's almost done. And then you could be done. And so that's part of why I don't think, otherwise, other than a public presentation, I don't know that I would say in three parts. Oh, I can also say Daphnis is a classical figure for classical stories, kind of mythology. And the simple thing to say about Daphnis is that he's conceptualized to be an icon, the absolute complete image of the beautiful and love, all kinds of, including from innocence to experience love, all this kind of stuff. His lover, wife, Chloe, is another version and complement of their distinct. So, okay. But then a monody is something like an elegy, but it's a song, not only about mourning, but a reflection. But the distinction is that it comes from one voice, so you're really paying attention to the person saying it, in this case, me. So the first part is Daphnis. Daphnis, our favorite Daphnis, you have changed. For centuries, we've wanted it to be stress, perhaps of war, literal or figurative, or of storge, or arrows gone awry, certainly awry, whatever it be. Meanwhile, you have simply been becoming yourself. Who knows himself, or is even himself before old age, or at least more age than you before decay and death shocked us all by taking you, at first upward, then down, to be still, unless moved numerous times by others since, no more by yourself. As we can, we're weeping, Daphnis, for you. 2, the spirit of Daphnis. We can't always cry even when we want, though I abidingly feel your presence, even increasingly through trying years and some happy months, even days with no sadness, only joy. You've become present in so much that has grown full and splendid. The old decrepit women, joined as if congenitally the last century, now celebrated and feted as married, or the boy rightly gendered and well loved. And celebrities and public people, Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart, Lil Nas X and Lady Gaga, Black and his Emil. And natural phenomena, oh Daphnis, natural phenomena have grown toward you, violent, turbulent, insistent in love. Love we know not how to feel, see, or know. As we can, we're weeping, Daphnis, for you. And number 3, and it's only 2 slides, so I know you see continue the next slide, but it's only 1 person. Daphnis in a contemporary marriage. Reciprocal, intimate partners once. He remembers her as remembering you, as she grows organically, enduring the pains and pleasures of the condition neither wanted, a love unimagined. Mental illness takes away and then gives. He hears the Daphnis and Lycaonian of Nami's family of family class read, and he knows, as you, Daphnis, grow in him, that love has been taken away from her. She no longer loves as before. She takes, she accuses, she sleeps. And yet, Daphnis, you grow between them, not just in him, although it seems it's all him when he gets over her shocking lies and betrayals. He's with the state come to get me by force, her eyes, then her mouth say, spitting rancor, soaking him in a maelstrom of passions, shock, umbrage, lacerating panic, dread, but also newly formed protectiveness. She, without the capacity to love him, while he loves anew and differently. This, Daphnis, is you, and for you, we weep. For some more love poems. This poem I kind of redid. It's actually in relationship to something Jim talked to me about in relationship to the lecture I gave for Women's History Month. And Jim said, love conquers all. It's like, and it's right anyway. So I thought, well, what if a contemporary American university we're going to try to engage conquering and love, something like that. Something like this would happen. Since love conquers all from long, long ago, we'll need a new call for a new modern flow administrator. Nothing flows like an administrator of campus love can, when conceived and formed intentionally. So we need to act bureaucratically to update and to modernize our love. We'll strategize and calculate above and below to find bland ubiquity of equitable love serenity. Not desire, but good proximity and best practices our school love must be. And this will conquer all who will be loved in the new splendor, love regulated. They read this poem. You do not feel as you would tonight. You do not feel as you would tonight were I in charge. You do not feel tonight as I would have it were the world all love. He said he loved you. He lived with you and then left you cold, never to see him again. You do not feel as you would tonight. You loved him, lived with him, yearned for his goodness then and at its autumn, as I would have it were the world all love. He brings heaviness to your brow now that he is no longer with you. You bear it even as you do not feel as you would tonight. Friends bring you smiles and hugs and their hope. You try to take it, love it, let it replace it, as I would have it were the world all love. You dwell in him who never existed except in your dream of him when he was here. You do not feel as you would tonight, as I would have it were the world all love. And here's a nice one that I actually rewrote for Vince at Vince's class. And I don't know, lots of people say they like it, so I thought I'd read it to you. A short romance. Meeting on a gay dating app, Pete and Jason thought each was sweet, texting for days without a gap. Not so terribly ugly, Pete spat venom then at the pure sin he felt and saw Jason complete. Jason seemed to love all the men Pete felt he could never get. The NSA he would contemn defensively, feeling beset by beauty's demand he can't meet, wishing he could be a coquette. Jason text messaged Pete to beat him asking what he did last night and told Pete of the way big meet he hosted, surprised with delight and pleased to have his own suite. Pete texts back right off, that's not right. Jay's not so attractive. His feet are too small and he's kind of mean, Pete thought as he felt rising heat. At the same time, Jason would clean while he would text his new romance, Pete, oblivious how he's seen, thinking that romance's best chance comes by forthrightness and tell-all, not disclosing by happenstance. But Pete's opprobrium appalled Jason, who text messaged back, call. Pete typed, hell no, I'm at the mall. We haven't even met at all in person, Jason texts back surprised. Pete says Jason's abominable. I expected you to be prized as a serious guy, not a gross go with anyone all ill-advised. Who is Pete, who seems so morose, Jay thought, as Jay typed, adios. Seeing the happy couple. Miserable girl sees about a happy couple she sees as she approaches the coffee shop door. Don't they know, the miserable girl says, almost audibly, they are hideous, she says audibly. and turns the knob of her soul, making a pivot away from the shop as she enters like anyone else. And so now I'll conclude with a hey canoe, a form I learned from Vince, and Vince who named the form. So, and then the form is 3 lines. The first line is 1 word, the second line is 2 words, the third line is 3 words. Then you can have a linked hey canoe, or then you reverse the order as you go. That's what we have here. And so it's just, anyway, so this is a hey canoe on old poetry. Formal or casual, we write similarly, unlike past centuries. Then they differentiated formal and casual to learn formal poetry. Speaking was formal and casual, but very similar to one another, as similar as formal and casual poetry are similar to us today. And so thank you.
Yes, we got some time for some questions. If anyone would like to ask any questions. Since I'm surprising you with that announcement, I will ask the first one.
Okay.
While you're thinking. I noticed that though a lot of, I would not say your poetry is all at all. I mean, some of it is using particular forms,
Yeah.
but a lot of it is simply using a kind of pattern and a kind of repetition, sometimes of language, sometimes of structure. Now, for some people, that might seem kind of limiting or restricting, but it seems that it's been really productive for you. So I was wondering if you could talk about that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that observation. So the repetition is valuable, and the repetition changes, right? I think you're saying that if you go through the poem, it's the same word, the same sound, same grammar, but entirely different experiences. If not, and meanings aren't so much there all the time, but you feel it differently. And that's something that I do like to do. I like reading that in other poets, and that's what and sometimes just writers who aren't poets do that kind of thing. And, I don't know if it's productive, but I like it when I do produce it, right? Like, I mean, to me, productive would be something that gets me to have a lot of it or something like that. But I do it a lot. I think maybe I selected poems that have a lot of that because I like them more. And I thought maybe this audience might like them too. So I do have other poetry that's very, simple thing to say is postmodern, but that just means no one can make any sense of that, right? It's like sort of mixing genres and stuff like that. And there's lots of postmodern poets who do that, whom I admire. But that's really hard to read. And you wouldn't maybe, there's lots of repetition there too, can be, but it's entirely different. Yeah, next, good question. Yes, good. Yes, great.
What convinced you to get into the book? What really introduced you into wanting to write instead?
Yeah, that's been good. Well, I've always written poetry since I can remember. I can always remember reading, that's what I can remember. And then to help me understand my reading, a simple thing to do was to imitate it. And so that was when I watch poetry, I imitate poetry. But then I could write poetry that's adapting a story, or sometimes even in science classes in junior high, I remember reading science, but I would write poetry about it to get into it and understand it, all of its artificial structures and things like that. So I've always written poetry, but I now think what I'm doing now is say, well, I kind of want to complete some poems. And by completing, I need somebody to read them. I really do think, oh, my poem is complete, and in some significant way when someone reads it or hears it. And so that's kind of, now why did I decide to do that? I really don't know. A few years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I said, I want to start completing some poems and having people read, see what happens with that. And then subsequently, since I've been doing it, so I do workshops, I send it out, or have other people read stuff. It's just been fun, gloriously fun and humane. What Kurt Vonnegut says, it just enriches your life to compose poetry, and then I think have somebody complete it for you.
And so it's your first time on the mic.
Yeah, it's very much like this. Yeah, and something a public kind of reading. Yes, that's right. So you're my inaugural auditory performance.
How do you like it?
Oh, that's very, I like it a lot. But of course, you guys are very cordial. I mean, I've been to these lots of academic conferences giving papers and stuff, or charity sessions, and they can be nuts sometimes. At least I love to tell the story. I was charity session one time, and somebody in the background hated one of the panelists, not entirely without reason, but the panelists would not just let it go. I said, just let it go, let her say it. And so the woman just yelled out from the back, "You sicken me!" And I think, and I'm the chair of the panel, I'm supposed to moderate. That really does need moderation. I don't know what to do. So no, I'm very glad not to have gotten that. Yeah, yes, right.
Have you ever considered exploring slam poetry?
I do like it. I've been to slam poetry events and big cities and stuff, and it's fantastic. It's phenomenal. But me doing it, I don't know. And I have composed what should be slam poetry, right? But that's very interesting. I've never had it completed. I've never had somebody read something that I consider slam poetry. I haven't then read it. That's what would happen, right? Have somebody hear it. I don't know. So no, I haven't considered doing that, right? Reading some slam poetry somewhere. But maybe I will now. Have you?
Yeah.
Do you like it?
I did it for all 4 years of high school.
Oh, so yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Anything else?
I have a question.
Oh,
go ahead.
Kara, yeah.
First of all, I thought you did a beautiful job
Thank you.
presenting.
Thank you.
I could have listened to you for an hour easily, maybe longer. What does writing poetry give you that your writing scholarship is not? You're very good at that too.
Yeah. That's a very good question, because it's hard for me to answer, because my scholarship and my criticism, I really do feel like I'm in there. And when you read it, you should know you're reading Jesse Swan. You shouldn't think about that. If you don't know me, if you don't know it, there's so much you're not going to understand in there, right?
The voice is very strong.
Yes. And even there at academic conferences, when I've delivered papers, I've had people say, I think I understand that article of yours I read. So much better having heard you deliver this paper, right? And I do think that's the case. So that's often what people say happens in poetry or fiction writing or drama or something like that, that they really feel like their voice and who they are can be expressed in it. And I do feel that way about poetry, and it is different. I'm not sure how it's different though. I don't know. It's certainly received differently. I do know audiences are different for poetry versus scholarship or literary criticism. And that's life, that's the world. And that's part of me, but it's part of me that I can't really totally control in the same way that I control myself, right? I don't know, I hope, does that kind of answer? I don't have a keen answer for what the poetry does. It's joyous, but sometimes literary criticism, so I don't know. But Karen?
No, yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Great.
Had a question on the
Yeah.
Zoom, just asking
go ahead.
about some poets whose work you've read recently and really enjoyed.
Well, I mean, I want to say Natalie Diaz just because that's the first day that came to mind, but I was like, I hesitated because like everybody's saying Natalie Diaz these days, right? What is his name? I just Lanham. He's got his book of poetry, and so he's really kind of interesting. And he's an older poet, so he's not new. Who else? I mean, I probably except like Mary Oliver. I mean, she's like simple. Who doesn't like her? Somebody I do sort of study with is called Toby Altman, and so he has a new book coming out, and so I'm looking forward to that. So look at his other poets. He's one of the ones who postmodern mixes the genres a lot.
Okay.
Good. Any other questions? Any comments? I'm going to ask. Yeah, here. So I know I'll let you go after this. So what do you think? Maybe you're completing for me. If the poem just ended there without that last slot. So that I was very curious about what you felt. Would that be a better poem without that last slot? Or just leave the last one?
I particularly like the way that it is with it there, it just kind of circles out the poem. It's the same as the first one. And that's kind of the style that I really like. But I
Okay.
think it'd be a great poem either way, but it just depends on your own personal preference for what you're feeling. And
Very
you can
good.
always switch it up whenever you read it. You know, if you're feeling that last line today, say that last line.
I
If
love
not,
that. But you yourself like having it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the last line because sometimes when I sit down to write, that's exactly what happens. And I end up with, well, what am I gonna write? You got all these things and then you gotta find some way to bring it all together.
Very good. Thanks. Great. Yeah.
I can go both ways. I think when you have the last line, you kind of ask them to read like, hey, what poem do I want to write? But if you leave it out, it's just like, this is like poetry. You know, I kind of like with the last line, I'm kind of saying like, hey, I'm asking you, like, what's your kind of advice? Like, how do you like read this?
Oh, so great. It's a conclusion for you that then opens.
It kind of seems like you're bringing me in more into the poem. It's like, hey,
I love that. That's great, Julie. Yeah.
I kind of like ending with the tree because that image is so provocative.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, to think about the tree being source of shade or sun, a poem could be illuminating or covering something. And I think you might focus on that image more if that was the last
I very much understand that. I feel that way. That's why I was kind of curious what you all might think, and it's kind of both and yeah. That's very interesting. So could this be two poems? Could I have one poem that's this, and then another poem that's without that, and just call it two poems? Thereby have 2 pages in a book or something? Yes, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, actually, I like the visual without it, the
Without.
hanging line
Julie
kind
said.
of hurts my OCD. You've got your lines, the long
I
lines
love
of
it.
the
Yes.
words
Yes.
all the way through, and it makes that really dense word section in the middle until you get to the very end, and then it's like,
That's right.
so.
Yeah, no, that's you, and that's what I want. How would you complete the poem? Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much. I think we're way past. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you.